Hello, fine individual. As always, today we're playing 7 Point Highlander, and we're going to be playing a deck I've wanted to try for a while, but for a few reasons I haven't. Although so far I've only posted Eldrazi vids, I am actually an aggro player. One of the main reasons for this is I like to feel confident that I'm making the correct decisions across a match, and in my experience aggro is far more facilitating in this regard. For the same reasons, I tend to steer clear of Brainstorm decks. Brainstorm and its friends are inarguably some of the most powerful things you can be doing in 7 Point Highlander. But to play these cards optimally, you have to have such an in-depth understanding of what is going on, and it has to last the entire game. For instance, if you cast a Brainstorm, the amount of outcomes possible if you have 9 cards in hand and a fetch land is like you'd have to use ChatGPT to calculate it. Saying this, I was curious to see what would happen if you combined Brainstorm decks with the relative simplicity of aggro. Enter Prowess, which has been a historically powerful deck, and something Juzza recently took down a Volty Fight Night with. Today I'm playing his list across 3 games, and I do want to focus more on the complicated decision points like Brainstorm, so please let me know if I fumble badly in that regard. Match 1, we are up against Reckless Red, which as a mono red player myself, I think is actually red favored. Both players are just racing, and mono red has like less wheel spinning comparatively. That said, Prowess is like a lot better in card quality. To start off, we get put in the 9 card Brainstorm Nightmare, and I put back Force of Negation and Sink into Stupor here. And I think you could make the argument maybe I should have Force of Negation to the Kumano. However, once again, I am really inexperienced with Force of Will type cards, and 2-for-1ing myself on a 1-drop that I have other ways of playing around just doesn't seem like the go. Our opponent plays out a Robarn, which I'm guessing is primarily for the ward, and to its credit, we do have to bolt ourselves to bolt it. Here, I decided to Mutagenic Growth to kill the Pyrosurfer, just because of how scary that card is with a fetch land, and knowing that they can play a hasty 2-2 next turn. We end up trading back and forth, and this expressive iteration is pretty much completely backbreaking. So much so, I didn't swing, as I thought the only way we really lose here is to something like a broadside, and us not being able to block. We get to untap, and we just go Donkey Kong mode, playing out a bunch of cards and winning game 1. Sideboard, I took out Force of Negation, Dismember, and Sink into Stupor, and put in the Blasts and Pyrokinesis. I think I've mentioned this in another video, but even though Dismember is removal, I really feel like the loss of life is not worth it against mono red. We both play 1-drops, and this might have been a mistake, but I decided to Pyrokinesis now, so that I don't have to take the 2 damage off Lavamancer in response, and we get to kill the Robarn again in their end step. Here I actually used my brain and stacked the deck so the Delver will flip, and even though they do get to Phoenix up their creature, once we get the Murktide sitting nice and girthy, our opponent scoops. Match 2, we were against Shops, and we get a pretty filthy start, especially considering our opponent was on the slow side. Even though we do cop the Devourer here, Slickshot is certainly a magic card, and we knock our opponent down to 3. We saw Ballista off the Bauble, and to be honest, that's what I was expecting our opponent to do to deal with the Slickshot, but they see a far better line, which manages to chain a few cards together and Shadow Spear equip the Devourer, which puts us actually a turn away from lethal. Once again, here Iteration does just insane work and gets us a land and a Vapor Snag. However, we actually don't have lethal because we can only get a mountain off the fetch land at this point. So here I just cop the block from the snake and snag on their turn, and that does actually get us the win. Sideboard, I only put in one of the moon creatures here, which retrospectively should have been the Magus, and we also get to play Null Rod and Consign, which are super tasty. I kept a pretty dirtily hand here, but the Null Rod was looking mighty fine. We play out said Null Rod, and it seems like our opponent kept a pretty slow one, and we get to get out on the board pretty much for free. We cop the Thought Knot, but they are forced to take the price of progress, and Gush just lets us go way over the top, which means we win match 2. Match 3, we were up against the sick 4-color self-graveyard exile Lurrus companion deck, which consistently beat us in the Eldrazi videos. We have to mull down to 5, but we do get a Darcy start, which is a great way to get back into the game. Our opponent plays a Feral Youth, which I don't know if I'm just bad or what, but I've lost so many games to this card recently. We get schmacked for 5, and they play a Kissless Skimmer. We get there on the second land, but we get Thor Seized, and we don't get there on the third land from the iteration. We get smacked down to 1, which locks us out of fetching, and we lose game 1. Although, to be fair, we were kind of close. Like something like a gush off the Consider might have actually got us there with the Fairy Dragon, which is kind of crazy. Sideboard, I just brought in Pyrokinesis and Submerge for Force of Negation and Soulscar Mage. Siding out the ground slogging bozos in heavy creature matchups is something I found really useful, and here it seems in general they'll just be way bigger than us on the ground. I kept a cheeky 1-land hand, but we get there and we start working the Steel Cutter. I just dazed this Fatal Push to keep on the pressure, even though maybe didn't need to because Steel Cutter is so crazy. After that, we get another Steel Cutter trigger, and our opponent just scoops it up, which is honestly very fair. This card, it just gets so many free wins, it's just ludicrous. Game 3, we mulled to 6, and retrospectively, I should have put Gutshot on the bottom rather than the Flame Slash, but at the time, I really wanted to be able to tempo fight a Mana Dork. Our Kumano gets Thought Seized, and we get lucky enough to surveil back the Flame Slash for our opponent's Emperor of Bones. We draw up the Cutter again and just ship the Gutshot to get our little friend. And on their turn, our opponent knows that we have Submerge and Price of Progress from the Thoughtseize, so just scoops it up. Maybe this is a little bit early, but considering they're effectively at 5, if they play a creature, they are literally just dead to Submerge from the Steel Cutter. Overall, I was insanely impressed with the deck. The amount of free wins you get for just playing your cards is so disgusting. My MVPs have been definitely Steel Cutter and Expressive Iteration. One of the biggest strengths of the deck was just how long the games can go for, and you're still well in it. I'm pretty used to aggro decks where you just kind of lay your hand on the table like a poker scene from a Western, and you just see if it's good enough. Prowess felt like you were always live, and the potential for cards like Gush, Iteration, and Steel Cutter to just end the game for no reason felt filthy. I honestly can't tell if Eldrazi are just not the best, or if Prowess is just that busted, but for me the power level felt noticeably different on Prowess. I recorded a couple more games, however the files got corrupted, so let me know if you would like me to give Prowess another go, or if there are any other decks you think could be cool. Anyway, see ya.